Narrated Abdullah bin Amr. Once Allah's Messenger remained behind us in a journey. He joined us while we were performing ablution for the Asr prayer, which was overdue. We were just passing wet hands over our feet, not washing them properly, so the Prophet addressed us in a loud voice and said twice or thrice, "Save your heels from the fire." Narrated Abu Burda's father. Allah's Messenger said 3 persons will have a double reward. A person from the people of the scriptures who believed in his prophet Jesus or Moses, and then believed in the prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, i.e., has embraced Islam. A slave who discharges his duties to Allah and his master. A master of a woman slave who teaches her good manners and educates her in the best possible way, and manumits her and then marries her. Narrated Ibn Abbas. Once Allah's Messenger came out with Bilal, while Bilal was accompanying him. He went towards the women, thinking that they had not heard him, i.e., his sermon. So he preached them and ordered them to pay alms. Hearing that, the women started giving alms. Some donated their earrings, some gave their rings, and Bilal was collecting them in the corner of his garment. Narrated Abu Huraira. I said, O Allah's Messenger, who will be the luckiest person who will gain your intercession on the day of resurrection? Allah's Messenger said, O Abu Huraira, I have thought that none will ask me about it before you, as I know your longing for the learning of hadiths. The luckiest person who will have my intercession on the day of resurrection will be the one who said sincerely from the bottom of his heart, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. I heard Allah's Messenger saying, Allah does not take away the knowledge by taking it away from the hearts of the people, but takes it away by the death of the religious learned men, till when none of the religious learned men remains. People will take as their leaders ignorant persons, who, when consulted, will give their verdict without knowledge, so they will go astray and will lead the people astray. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Some women requested the Prophet to fix a day for them, as the men were taking all of his time. On that he promised them one day for religious lessons and commandments. Once during such a lesson, the Prophet said, "A woman whose 3 children die will be shielded by them from the hellfire." On that a woman asked, "If only 2 die?" He replied, "Even 2 will shield her from the hellfire." Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. As above, the sub-narrators are different. Abu Huraira qualified the 3 children referred to in the above-mentioned hadith as not having reached the age of committing sins, i.e., age of puberty. Whenever Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, heard anything which she did not understand, she used to ask again till she understood it completely. Once the Prophet said, "Whoever will be called to account about his deeds on the day of resurrection will surely be punished." I said, "Doesn't Allah say he surely will receive an easy reckoning?" The Prophet replied, "This means only the presentation of the accounts, but whoever will be argued about his account will certainly be ruined." Abu Shura'i said when Amr bin Sa'id was sending the troops to Mecca to fight Abdullah bin az-Zubayr, I said to him, O chief, allow me to tell you what the Prophet said on the day following the conquests of Mecca. My ears heard and my heart comprehended, and I saw him with my own eyes when he said it. He glorified and praised Allah, and then said, Allah, and not the people, has made Mecca a sanctuary. So anybody who has belief in Allah and the last day, i.e. a Muslim, should neither shed blood in it nor cut down its trees. If anybody argues that fighting is allowed in Mecca, as Allah's Messenger did fight in Mecca, tell him that Allah gave permission to his apostle, but he did not give it to you. The Prophet added, Allah allowed me only for a few hours on that day of the conquest, and today, now, its sanctity is the same, valid as it was before. So it is incumbent upon those who are present to convey this information to those who are absent. Abu Shura'i was asked, what did Amr reply? He said, Amr said, O Abu Shura'i, I know better than you in this respect. Mecca does not give protection to one who disobeys Allah, or runs after committing murder or theft and takes refuge in Mecca. Narrated Abu Bakr, the Prophet said, no doubt, your blood property. The sub-narrator Muhammad thought that Abu Bakr had also mentioned, and your honour, chastity, are sacred to one another, as is the sanctity of this day of yours, in this month of yours. It is incumbent on those who are present to inform those who are absent. Muhammad, the sub-narrator, used to say, Allah's Messenger told the truth. The Prophet repeated twice, no doubt, haven't I conveyed Allah's message to you? Narrated Ali, the Prophet said, do not tell a lie against me, for whoever tells a lie against me intentionally, then he will surely enter the hellfire. I said to my father, I do not hear from you any narration of Allah's apostle, as I hear his narration from so-and-so. As Zubayr replied, I was always with him, and I heard him saying, whoever tells a lie against me, then surely let him occupy his seat in hellfire. The fact which stops me from narrating a great number of hadiths to you is that the Prophet said, whoever tells a lie against me intentionally, then surely let him occupy his seat in hellfire. I heard the Prophet saying, whoever intentionally ascribes to me what I have not said, then surely let him occupy his seat in hellfire. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, name yourselves with my name, use my name, but do not name yourselves with my kunya name, i.e. Abul Qasim. And whoever sees me in a dream, then surely he has seen me, for Satan cannot impersonate me. And whoever tells a lie against me intentionally, then surely let him occupy his seat in hellfire. I asked Ali, have you got any book which has been revealed to the Prophet apart from the Quran? Ali replied, no, except Allah's book, or the power of understanding which has been bestowed by Allah upon a Muslim, or what is written in this sheet of paper with me. I asked, what is written in this sheet of paper? It deals with the diya, compensation blood money paid by the killer to the relatives of the victim, for ransom for the releasing of the captives from the hands of the enemies, and the law that no Muslim should be killed in qisas, equality in punishment, for the killing of a disbeliever. In the year of the conquest of Mecca, the tribe of Khuzā killed a man from the tribe of Bani Lais in revenge for a killed person belonging to them. They informed the Prophet about it, so he rode his Rahila she-camel for riding, and addressed the people, saying, Allah held back the killing from Mecca. The sub-narrator is in doubt whether the Prophet said elephant or killing, as the Arabic words standing for these words have great similarity in shape, but he, Allah, led his apostle and the believers over the power of the infidels of Mecca. Beware, Mecca is a sanctuary. Verily fighting in Mecca was not permitted for anyone before me, nor will it be permitted for anyone after me. It was made legal for me for a few hours on such and such day. It is not allowed to uproot its thorny shrubs, or to uproot its trees, or to pick up its look at fallen things, except by a person who will look for its owner, announce it publicly, and if somebody is killed, then his closest relative has the right to choose one of the two, the blood money, diya, or retaliation, having the killer killed. In the meantime, a man from Yemen came and said, O Allah's Messenger, get that written for me. The Prophet ordered his companions to write that for him. Then a man from Quraysh said, accept al-idkhir, a type of grass that has good smell, O Allah's Messenger, as we use it in our houses and graves. The Prophet said, accept al-idkhir, i.e. al-idkhir is allowed to be plucked. Narrated Abu Hurairah, there is none among the companions of the Prophet who has narrated more hadiths than I, except Abdullah bin Amr bin al-As, who used to write them, and I never did the same. Narrated Ubaidullah bin Abdullah ibn Abbas said, when the ailment of the Prophet became worse, he said, bring me for writing paper, and I will write for you a statement after which you will not go astray. But Umar said, the Prophet is seriously ill, and we have got Allah's book with us, and that is sufficient for us. But the companions of the Prophet differed about this, and there was a hue and cry. On that the Prophet said to them, go away and leave me alone. It is not right that you should quarrel in front of me. Ibn Abbas came out saying, it was most unfortunate, a great disaster, that Allah's Messenger was prevented from writing that statement for them because of their disagreement and noise. Note, it is apparent from this hadith that Ibn Abbas had witnessed the event and came out saying this statement. The truth is not so, for Ibn Abbas used to say this statement on narrating the hadith, and he had not witnessed the event personally. Narrated Salama, one night Allah's Messenger got up and said, Subhanallah, how many afflictions have been descended tonight, and how many treasures have been disclosed. Go and wake the sleeping lady occupants of these dwellings, his wives, up for prayers. A well-dressed soul in this world may be naked in the hereafter. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar, once the Prophet led us in the Isha prayer during the last days of his life, and after finishing it, the prayer with Taslim, he said, do you realize the importance of this night? Nobody present on the surface of the earth tonight will be living after the completion of 100 years from this night. Narrated Abu Huraira, I have memorized two kinds of knowledge from Allah's Messenger. I have propagated one of them to you, and if I propagated the second, then my larynx throat would be cut, i.e. killed. The Prophet said to me during Hajjat al-Wida, let the people keep quiet and listen. Then he said, do not become infidels, revert to disbelief after me by striking the necks, cutting the throats of one another, killing each other. Narrated Sa'id bin Jubair, I said to Ibn Abbas, Nawfal Bakali claims that Moses, the companion of Khadir, was not the Moses of Bani Israel, but he was another Moses. Ibn Abbas remarked that the enemy of Allah, Nawf, was a liar. Narrated Ubay bin Ka'b, the Prophet said, once the Prophet Moses stood up and addressed Bani Israel. He was asked, who is the most learned man amongst the people? He said, I am the most learned. Allah admonished Moses, as he did not attribute absolute knowledge to him, Allah. So Allah inspired to him at the junction of the two seas, there is a slave amongst you, amongst my slaves, who is more learned than you. Moses said, O my Lord, how can I meet him? Allah said, take a fish in a large basket and proceed, and you will find him at the place where you will lose the fish. So Moses set out along with his servant boy Yusha bin Nun, and carried a fish in a large basket, till they reached a rock, where they laid their heads, i.e. laid down and slept. The fish came out of the basket, and took its way into the sea as in a tunnel. So it was an amazing thing for both Moses and his servant boy. They proceeded for the rest of that night and the following day. When the day broke, Moses said to his servant boy, bring us our early meal. No doubt we have suffered much fatigue in this journey. Moses did not get tired till he passed the place about which he was told. There the servant boy told Moses, do you remember when we betook ourselves to the rock? I indeed forgot the fish. Moses remarked, that is what we have been seeking. So they went back, retracing their footsteps, till they reached the rock. There they saw a man, covered with a garment, or covering himself with his own garment. Moses greeted him. Al-Khadir replied, saying, how do people greet each other in your land? Moses said, I am Moses. He asked, the Moses of Bani Israel? Moses replied in the affirmative, and added, may I follow you, so that you teach me of that knowledge which you have been taught? Al-Khadir replied, verily you will not be able to remain patient with me, O Moses. I have some knowledge of Allah which he has taught me, and which you do not know, while you have some knowledge which Allah has taught you, which I do not know. Moses said, Allah willing, you will find me patient, and I will disobey no order of yours. So both of them set out walking along the seashore, as they did not have a boat. In the meantime, a boat passed by them, and they requested the crew of the boat to take them on board. The crew recognized Al-Khidr and took them on board without fare. Then a sparrow came and stood on the edge of the boat, and dipped its beak once or twice in the sea. Al-Khidr said, O Moses, my knowledge and your knowledge have not decreased Allah's knowledge, except as much as the sparrow has decreased the water of the sea with its beak. Al-Khidr went to one of the planks of the boat and plucked it out. Moses said, these people gave us a free lift, but you have broken their boat and scuttled it so as to drown its people. Al-Khidr replied, didn't I tell you that you will not be able to remain patient with me? Moses said, "Call me not to account for what I forgot." The first excuse of Moses was that he had forgotten. Then they proceeded further and found a boy playing with other boys. Al-Khidr took hold of the boy's head from the top and plucked it out with his hands, i.e. killed him. Moses said, "Have you killed an innocent soul who has killed none?" Al-Khidr replied, "Did I not tell you that you cannot remain patient with me?" Then they both proceeded, till when they came to the people of a town, they asked them for food, but they refused to entertain them. They found there a wall on the point of collapsing. Al-Khidr repaired it with his own hands. Moses said, "If you had wished, surely you could have taken wages for it." Al-Khidr replied, "This is the parting between you and me." The Prophet added, "May Allah be merciful to Moses. Would that he could have been more patient to learn more about his story with Al-Khidr." Narrated Abu Musa came to the Prophet and asked, "O Allah's Messenger, what kind of fighting is in Allah's cause?" I ask this, for some of us fight because of being enraged and angry, and some for the sake of his pride and haughtiness. The Prophet raised his head as the questioner was standing, and said, "He who fights so that Allah's word Islam should be superior, then he fights in Allah's cause." Narrated Abdullah bin Amr, I saw the Prophet near the Jamrah, and the people were asking him questions about religious problems. A man asked, "O Allah's Messenger, I have slaughtered the hadith animal before doing the rami." The Prophet replied, "Do the rami now, and there is no harm." Another person asked, "O Allah's Messenger, I got my head shaved before slaughtering the animal." The Prophet replied, "Do the slaughtering now, and there is no harm." So on that day, when the Prophet was asked about anything as regards the ceremonies of Hajj, performed before or after its due time, his reply was, "Do it now, and there is no harm." Narrated Abdullah, while I was going with the Prophet through the ruins of Medina, and he was reclining on a date palm leaf stalk, some Jews passed by. Some of them said to the others, "Ask him, the Prophet, about the Spirit." Some of them said that they should not ask him that question, as he might give a reply which would displease them. But some of them insisted on asking, and so one of them stood up and asked, "O Abul Qasim, what is the Spirit?" The Prophet remained quiet. I thought he was being inspired divinely, so I stayed till that state of the Prophet while being inspired was over. The Prophet then said, "And they ask you, O Muhammad, concerning the Spirit. Say, the Spirit, its knowledge, is with my Lord, and of knowledge you, mankind, have been given only a little." Narrated Aswad ibn az-Zubayr said to me, "Aisha used to tell you secretly a number of things. What did she tell you about the Kaaba?" I replied, "She told me that once the Prophet said, 'O Aisha, had not your people been still close to the pre-Islamic period of ignorance, infidelity, I would have dismantled the Kaaba and would have made two doors in it, one for entrance and the other for exit.'" Later on, Ibn az-Zubayr did the same. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Once Muad was along with Allah's Messenger as a companion rider. Allah's Messenger said, "O Muad bin Jabal." Muad replied, "Labbaik and Sa'daik, O Allah's Messenger." Again the Prophet said, "O Muad." Muad said thrice, Labbaik and Sa'daik, O Allah's Messenger. Allah's Messenger said, There is none who testifies sincerely that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and Muhammad is his apostle, except that Allah will save him from the hellfire. Mu'adh said, O Allah's Messenger, should I not inform the people about it so that they may have glad tidings? He replied, When the people hear about it, they will solely depend on it. Then Mu'adh narrated the above-mentioned hadith just before his death, being afraid of committing sin by not telling the knowledge. Narrated on us, I was informed that the Prophet has said to Mu'adh, Whosoever will meet Allah without associating anything in worship with him will go to paradise. Mu'adh asked the Prophet, Should I not inform the people of this good news? The Prophet replied, No, I am afraid lest they should depend upon it absolutely. Narrated Salama. Salam came to Allah's Messenger and said, Verily, Allah is not shy of telling you the truth. Is it necessary for a woman to take a bath after she has a wet dream, nocturnal sexual discharge? The Prophet replied, Yes, if she notices a discharge. Salama then covered her face and asked, O Allah's Messenger, does a woman get a discharge? He replied, Yes, let your right hand be in dust. An Arabic expression you say to a person when you contradict his statement, meaning you will not achieve goodness, and that is why the son resembles his mother. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Once Allah's Messenger said, Among the trees there is a tree, the leaves of which do not fall, and is like a Muslim. Tell me the name of that tree. Everybody started thinking about the trees of the desert areas, and I thought of the date palm tree, but felt shy to answer. The others asked, O Allah's Apostle, inform us of it. He replied, It is the date palm tree. I told my father what had come to my mind, and on that he said, Had you said it, I would have preferred it to such and such a thing that I might possess. Narrated Ali, I used to get the emotional urethral discharge frequently, so I requested Al-Miqdad to ask the Prophet about it. Al-Miqdad asked him, and he replied, One has to perform ablution after it. Narrated Nafi, Abdullah bin Umar said, A man got up in the mosque and said, O Allah's Messenger, at which place you order us that we should assume the ihram? Allah's Messenger replied, The residents of Medina should assure the ihram from Dhul Hulayfa, the people of Syria, Al-Juhfa, and the people of Najd from Qarn. Ibn Umar further said, The people consider that Allah's Messenger had also said, The residents of Yemen should assume ihram from Ya Lam. Ibn Umar used to say, I do not remember whether Allah's Messenger had said the last statement or not. A man asked the Prophet, What kind of clothes should a muhrim, a Muslim intend to perform Umrah or Hajj, wear? He replied, He should not wear a shirt, a turban, trousers, a head cloak, or a garment scented with saffron or worse kinds of perfumes. And if he has no slippers, then he can use kuf, socks made from thick fabric or leather. But the socks should not be cut short, so as to make the ankles bare. But the socks should be cut short, so as to make the ankles bare. Narrated Abu Huraira, Allah's Messenger said, the prayer of a person who does hadaf, passes urine stool or wind, is not accepted till he performs the ablution. A person from Hadramaut asked Abu Huraira, what is hadaf? Abu Huraira replied, hadaf means the passing of wind. Once I went up the roof of the mosque along with Abu Huraira. He performed ablution and said, I heard the Prophet saying, on the day of resurrection my followers will be called al-Ghur al-Muhajjalun, from the trace of ablution, and whoever can increase the area of his radiance should do so, i.e. by performing ablution regularly. My uncle asked Allah's Messenger about a person who imagined to have passed wind during the prayer. Allah's Apostle replied, he should not leave his prayers unless he hears sound or smells something. The Prophet went with him for the prayer without performing a new ablution. Sufyan said to Ammar that some people said the eyes of Allah's Messenger sleep but his heart does not sleep. Ammar replied, I heard Ubayd bin Umar say that the dreams of the prophets were divine inspiration, and then he recited the verse, I, Abraham, see in a dream, O my son, but I offer you in sacrifice to Allah. 37:102. Ibn Abbas said, the Prophet slept till he snored, and then prayed, or probably lay till his breath sounds were heard, and then he got up and prayed. Ibn Abbas added, I stayed overnight in the house of my aunt Maimuna. The Prophet slept for a part of the night, and late in the night he got up and performed ablution from a hanging waterskin, a light perfect ablution, and stood up for the prayer. I too performed a similar ablution. Then I went and stood on his left. He drew me to his right, and prayed as much as Allah wished, and again lay and slept till his breath sounds were heard. Later on the Muaddin, call-maker for prayer, came to him and informed him that it was time for the prayer. The Prophet went with him for the prayer without performing a new ablution. Sufyan said to Ammar that some people said, the eyes of Allah's Messenger sleep but his heart does not sleep. Narrator Usama bin Zayd. Allah's Messenger proceeded from Arafat till when he reached the mountain pass he dismounted, urinated, and then performed ablution, but not a perfect one. I said to him, is it time for the prayer, O Allah's Messenger? He said, the place of prayer is ahead of you. He rode till when he reached al-Muzdalifah, he dismounted and performed ablution, and a perfect one. The call for Iqamah was pronounced, and he led the Maghrib prayer. Then everybody made his camel kneel down at its place. Then the Iqamah was pronounced for the Isha prayer, which the Prophet led, and no prayer was offered in between the two prayers, Isha and Maghrib. Ibn Abbas performed ablution and washed his face in the following way. He ladled out a handful of water, rinsed his mouth, and washed his nose with it by putting in water, then blowing it out. He then took another handful of water and did like this, gesturing, joining both hands, and washed his face, took another handful of water, and washed his right forearm. He again took another handful of water, and washed his left forearm, and passed wet hands over his head, and took another handful of water, and poured it over his foot, up to his ankles, and washed it thoroughly, and similarly took another handful of water, and washed thoroughly his left foot, up to the ankles. And I said, I saw Allah's Messenger performing ablution in this way. Narrated Ibn Abbas, the Prophet said, if any one of you, on having sexual relations with his wife, said, and he must say it before starting, in the name of Allah, O Allah, protect us from Satan, and also protect what you bestow upon us, i.e. the coming offspring. And if it is destined that they should have a child, Satan will never be able to harm that offspring. Whenever the Prophet went to answer the call of nature, he used to say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubusi wal-khaba'ith. O Allah, I seek refuge with you from all offensive and wicked things, evil deeds and evil spirits. Allah's Messenger said, if any one of you goes to an open space for answering the call of nature, he should neither face nor turn his back towards the Qibla. He should either face the east or the west. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar, people say, whenever you sit for the answering of the call of nature, you should not face the Qibla or Baitul Maqdis, Jerusalem. I told them, once I went up the roof of our house, and I saw Allah's Apostle answering the call of nature while sitting on two bricks, facing Baitul Maqdis, Jerusalem, but there was a screen covering him. The wives of the Prophet used to go to Al-Manasi. The wives of the Prophet used to go to Al-Manasi, a vast open place near Baqi at Medina, to answer the call of nature at night. Umar used to say to the Prophet, let your wives be veiled, but Allah's Apostle did not do so. One night, Sauda bint Zam'a, the wife of the Prophet, went out at Isha time, and she was a tall lady. Umar addressed her and said, I have recognized you, O Sauda. He said so, as he desired eagerly that the verses of Al-Hijab, the observing of veils by the Muslim woman, may be revealed. So Allah revealed the verses of Al-Hijab, a complete body cover excluding the eyes. The Prophet said to his wives, you are allowed to go out to answer the call of nature. Whenever Allah's Messenger went to answer the call of nature, I, along with another boy, used to accompany him with a tumbler full of water, so that he might wash his private parts with it. Allah's Messenger said, whenever any one of you drinks water, he should not breathe in the drinking utensil, and whenever any one of you goes to the lavatory, he should neither touch his penis nor clean his private parts with his right hand. Narrated Abu Huraira, I followed the Prophet while he was going out to answer the call of nature. He used not to look this way or that. So when I approached near him, he said to me, fetch for me some stones for cleaning the private parts, or said something similar, and do not bring a bone or a piece of dung. So I brought the stones in the corner of my garment and placed them by his side, and I then went away from him. When he finished from answering the call of nature, he used them. Narrated Humran, the slave of Uthman. I saw Uthman bin Affan asking for a tumbler of water, and when it was brought, he poured water over his hands and washed them thrice, and then put his right hand in the water container and rinsed his mouth, washed his nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out. Then he washed his face and forearms up to the elbows thrice, passed his wet hands over his head, and washed his feet up to the ankles thrice. Then he said, Allah's Messenger said, if anyone performs ablution like that of mine, and offers a 2 rak'ah prayer, during which he does not think of anything else, not related to the present prayer, then his past sins will be forgiven. This verse is, verily those who conceal the clear signs and the guidance which we have sent down. I heard the Prophet saying, if a man performs ablution perfectly and then offers the compulsory congregational prayer, Allah will forgive his sins committed between that prayer and the next prayer, till he offers it. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, whoever performs ablution should clean his nose with water by putting the water in it and then blowing it out, and whoever cleans his private parts with stones should do it with odd number of stones. And whoever wakes up from his sleep should wash his hands before putting them in the water for ablution, because nobody knows where his hands were during sleep.